January 8th of 2021. We're speaking about, kind of this liberal, what they want to call liberal movement / feminism. It seems that the movement really existed initially as a way to protect women from exploitation, but it becomes something whereas it is now protecting women to exploit themselves, in my opinion. This is like women are now encouraged to dress however they think is popular, let's say.
Yeah, they don't necessarily know why. They just, that's what popular girls wear. I should wear the really short shorts, or showing belly or something.
Right. Spandex are in now. The girls are wearing them. The young girls. But
being on campus. Yeah.
And the campus is the model for the next generation, because those are the cool people on the earth, so to speak, because they're in that kind of time period where we all would like to be, like in our 20s or whatever,
Yeah.
And so the high schoolers look up to the college kids, and the younger generation look up to the high schoolers. So that's how they're able to move people. It's like when they first started Facebook, they only allowed for college students.
Oh, right, yeah. That's supposed to be for college students only.
Yeah, that's how it started. So that was its target, and then they were able to expand from there. The high schoolers, and after that they brought all people in. So if they had started it just to say, hey, everybody can join, and like somebody's mother was like, oh, you're on Facebook, I'm getting on Facebook, then it wouldn't be as popular. You see? So they bring in the popular group, and then the rest follow.
Makes me think of the tactic in warfare, where you take say you conquer some town, and you take the most attractive people that there are, like all the most attractive men, all the most attractive women, and like younger especially, and you take them back to your hometown, and you teach them of your own ways, you treat them really well, and so they have a really good view of the city back home, and then you send them back, and they act as propaganda units, biological warfare, propaganda units based on your town, right? But the opposing town now has your influence and their most popular people. That's it.
Yeah, they become your salespeople.
Yeah, and they do it for free. They think that they get rewarded out of attention.
They've been indoctrinated.
Yeah.
I've got to blow my nose. Yeah.
Also, we're talking about the dominance of men over women versus women over men.
Yes, you had brought up a video you said was getting 3 billion views or something.
Oh yeah, freaking, was it Despacito?
Yeah.
I thought about it because President Biden, the president, during the presidential election.
The so-called guy, yeah.
Right. Anyways, Biden has like this moment where it's like a victory speech over the DNC. Like he's got the nomination, and or somewhere in that time period. Anyways, he plays Despacito on his cell phone to try to connect with like the Hispanic crowd.
Oh yeah.
It's such pandering. He doesn't listen to Despacito. Yeah.
Well, maybe not. The thing is that he's yeah.
You can't 100%, but his staffers told him like, if you don't.
Yeah.
He's just doing whatever they tell him.
Yeah.
He's just the figurehead of, the whole team.
That's how they are. Yeah. Like when they advertise the pedophile as being some kind of a dictator who's controlling the strings at every level, if you pay attention, you'll know that can't be the case. When he tries to veto somebody and gets overrid, as we spoke about, though, that's part of the deception to make think that he wasn't really for funding for the military. But again, it lends you to, if you don't like him, it will lend you to support the funding. In any event,
yeah, it's binary.
Use faces. They're faces. I could say they're feces.
It was interesting. It's a Latin word. I don't know the origin, but that's interesting. They sound so similar.
Yeah, but that's what the so-called politicians really amount to. Their signature might appear on a bill, but they didn't get to where they were for no reason, and they're not getting to where they're going for no reason. That they're own.
Right. Yeah.
Their own.
Yeah, you don't get to be in that position unless you're chosen for a certain reason. And you're chosen for certain reasons because various powers have power over you, and various powers don't. You're on a certain status, and they form a committee. And this big team. It's an oligarchy, really. Democracy turns into oligarchy because they're going to eventually find this group that's really wealthy, and because of wealth, they're going to keep gaining more wealth. And even in a couple of the Gospels, I know for sure Luke and I think John, where Jesus says, "Those who have more will get more, and those who have less will get less." And I think in that context, he's talking about faith.
Yeah.
But it's easy to take that out of context and still it be true. Like that's just general principle. Like people have more money, will get more money.
Yeah, it applies both ways.
Status will get more status and stuff like that. So.
It
still
reminds me
right
of being in business school, and when the idea of politicians was brought up, and people just shrug it off and laugh because they realize it's corrupt, and then they turn around and they work for and use the system to their advantage. That's evil. If you know that these so-called leaders are corrupt, if you can depend on them to lie to you, and you continue to support them solely because you've gamed the system and you've figured out how to benefit from it, then you are, on that track to hell.
Yeah, you're acting as the mechanism there.
But the whole way the structure is designed is you've got, these paid for actors and actresses being elected, so-called, legitimate processes. And then once they get in, it's just like they're honed in, they're cornered, and they're unable to lift a finger, even if they make pretend that they have the willpower to do some kind of change. What they do is they have this oppositional force, for example, that's preventing them to get anything done. And that continues to be their pretext, their way of saying, hey, this is the way things are, but we can't help it, it's somebody else's fault. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're culpable.
Well, the way the structure is designed is that, say you'd like to make a change to help to develop a state-run facility by homeless people, to give people some food and some shelter. We've got so many evictions happening. So they introduce the bill, let's say. All they have to do is say, well, this side, the other side of the table disagrees. We can't get it done. And that's what continues to happen between both these parties. Now the media will portray it, as something where they're oppositional forces that there's an actual attempt to make, you know, some kind of a reform, you know, but in reality, you know, those forces are colluding. You see, it doesn't matter whether you have, you know, this character, you know, in the so-called executive seat, or whether you have another character, the direction moves the same. The people are pushed in the same direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so those heads, they're not even really worthy to talk about, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you made a good point. It's like they have this puppet show of combatants, and it's the one hand in the back who's controlling the whole show, and then the people are watching the puppets thinking, oh, I hope my side wins, I hope my side wins.
Yeah.
And they fight against each other for totally valid causes, and you defend what they say, you relate to it because it's right, in some sense. Like,
yeah, oh yeah, they brand themselves.
The Democrats have points, and if you're
you
born
agree with
and you're raised in that environment and you hear these ideas all the time, you're probably going to believe it. Same thing is true with Republican stuff. And so you feel like that side has a valid cause that's worth defending and is right, and its fallbacks, its dropbacks, whatever, are justified and made good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly what justified means, is to make good, or to make right, make true, make just, right? So they justify and they defend the parts of the platform that don't seem so great in order to fight against what they consider evil on the other side, because it's always diametric opinions, like totally binary thinking, like you're talking about, like pro-abortion, pro-life. It's always something positive on each side, not pro-choice. I should say.
Yeah, I mean, they introduce themselves as beneficial to the people, at least in one audience and another audience.
Yeah.
But that's only for branding purposes. You see, because what's happened now is, like, for example, one party may brand itself as conservative. They're going to save taxpayer dollars, and essentially, the idea is they make people more money, right? People live more comfortably, right? As long as, you know, they're willing to work for it, and so on and so forth. Now, while this same party is in power, they're printing up trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
Trillions.
Yeah.
Something that you've never seen before
Printer go
happening
better, you know?
right underneath that nose while they talk about something else. That money right there, right? That makes up what they call the national debt.
Yeah, every time they make money, they borrow.
That's what they keep talking about. Oh, we need to stop. We need to stop. When you think about, what was it, 2008, all right? There was the so-called recession. They blamed it on the so-called housing market. Yeah. And they scuffled for however long to determine whether $896 or $890 billion was sufficient to cover this loss, which was what the banks were asking for, you know.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
It was a bailout.
2008 or so.
But that was what they were discussing. It was less than $1 trillion. Today, with this situation happening, there's already printed, I think, $3 trillion and more on the way. All that does is diminish what you have as far as your, you know, liquid assets.
Yeah, the more money they print, the less value each dollar has.
Yeah.
So that I can keep my same bank account total, and the more that we go into debt, the less that's worth.
Mm-hmm. So what these players have done is they've identified themselves as being worthy for one cause, and when they've got people believing that, they turn around and they do a flip.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. That's the quote that makes me think of it. Evil preaches tolerance until it has domination, and then it silences truth.
Mm.
Or silences the good, I should say.
Either one is.
I think the real quote is the good, but
Yeah.
it makes sense both ways.
Yeah.
Because the true is the good. Everybody's searching for it, right? Everybody wants it, even.
Yeah. That's what it is. And that's why we have joined together today to establish this.
I've been looking for this quote in Proverbs. I think it's in Proverbs, but I can't remember where I saw it. It was like I was reading something else and it said, "See this quotation."
Yeah.
And I pulled over to it, I'm like, "Oh, it's really nice," and then I marked it.
Yeah.
And I totally forgot.
You forgot it.
It has something to do with like it's like loving God includes seeking divine wisdom, basically, and we'll always be seeking that truth.
Yeah.
And it says it much better than I said it, but or it's a blessing.
Was
to
it
seek
Solomon
this truth or
prayed to
something.
God and said, grant me wisdom?
Yeah.
And Lord was pleased. Lord said, since you have asked this thing of me, it shall be so. The Lord knows his most worthy, precious gift.
I really liked reading. I think it was Samuel, where he becomes king, wasn't it? Samuel.
Samuel, yeah. Samuel is known as a prophet.
I really like the books of Samuel.
And a high priest. He's got the attributes of all.
Those are my favorite. Those are my favorite the books that came from Samuel. And then the Chronicles has some pretty good stuff too. Pretty good stuff. Like there's that. I went to church recently and they had a sermon on part of Chronicles I hadn't read yet, and it was about how they were going to some war. It was when they were totally surrounded by nations, and they were just way outnumbered. And God told them to send only a few, and don't bring any weapons. And instead of soldiers out front, he says, bring your choir out front.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they sang. That's all they did was praise to God.
Oh.
And then while they were doing that, all the other armies fought each other, and they killed each other.
Oh, yeah. I do recall this. Yeah.
And in order to make it happen, they had like a certain period of prayer and fasting.
That's right.
And then
They were already weak.
the leader found the solution.
They were already weakened, you know, but Lord says to put their faith in the Lord. And,
Seems to be a thing.
that's what it takes. Even the Christ had said, his faith is like a mustard seed that grows so great that even the fowls of the air come lodge underneath the shadow of. You know, that small amount of faith is able to move the mountain.
Because it grows every time. Like it said, like that saying by Jesus, the more something has, the more it'll grow. The less something has, the less it'll grow. And reversing. It's a spiraling effect. And I feel like those moments where there's a shift from the negative to the positive are the most important. Like, your growth will happen regardless in either direction, but the shifts are crucial.
That rebirth.
Yeah.
That's where it begins.
And you can easily shift downward if you just don't do anything, it tends downward. It's like gravity in a direction.
Takes strength, willpower, tolerance, patience, long-suffering, all those godly attributes. Forgiveness and mercy. Humble.
Yeah, I've always imagine two cones upside down and touching each other at a point. There's
Columns, upside down.
like cones, like
Cones?
imagine like a circular base but with a point on top,
Yes,
almost like a pyramid but with just circles around.
yes.
And then that but then in reverse upside down on top of it,
Yes,
pointed at the center where
Yes.
they're equal.
right. Look like a time, like one of
An
those.
hourglass kind of.
Hourglass, yeah.
Yeah. That shape is it's a picture it's an illustration of this principle where the person is sitting at that spot in the middle, and you have imagine like two planes that are like the earth and the heavens, And the smaller the up top is, like the bigger the bottom is, and the bigger the top is, the smaller the bottom is. And as long as that middle point is always moved up and down a lot. Imagine like you've got two pieces of rubber, and you tie a string through it, and you put little fasteners on each end, and then like a little tie in the middle. You can kind of pull it up and down, and it'll move the rubber up and down, depending on where that spot is. You can have something right in the center, and then it goes up and down. Anyways, it's the positive and negative spirals. Like, the further down you go, the bigger and crazier that downward spiral is. And the higher up you go, the bigger the spiral is.
Oh yeah.
So if you pull men all the way down to the ground, he sees this vast array of heaven. But if you have him up all the way up top, you see the vast array of ground. And it's like if you have to, it's like a lesson of humility and pride as well. Like the more humility you have, you look upward. Whereas the more pride you have, you look downward.
So it's not a good thing to be on top.
Well, it works kind of in both ways. That's one way to see it. But the other way is to be up top is to have the most force underneath you, pushing you up. And if you're up top, you're the closest to heaven. And all this downward is stuff that you're on top of.
Well, you know, the ancient Babylonians thought that the closer that they could get to heaven would be the God, that, you know, become the God. Like they thought that was the power, and by achieving that, you know, they could become God. But that's only in theory. Like in the story.
That's just it. When they're up there at the upper spiral, they make themselves gods.
Yeah, because in logic, you have that order beginning to take place, where man seeks domination, and so man acquires that high spot because he's taught the people that by being there, he's worthy of their praise. And kind of, if you think a little deeper, you know that they would have had to build this structure, and it was a massive structure, the Tower of Babel.
Right.
And how did they get the workers to do it? Well, if they could convince them that they'd be able to see into them inner chambers as they built, then they would get the motivation, the workforce. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So today, you have them at the top, and people underneath seek power. I mean, it's pretty clear. People need power. People seek power to some level. You know, some people feel like they're worth more power than others, and that kind of thing. But you know, I think everyone has an inherent need for some kind of power. At least, you know, the power to have enough food to eat at the minimum. Anyway, power drives people. You know, the idea of having what they call status, you know, privilege, some like call respect. This kind of thing drives people, and they've managed to devise these temples, you know, tangible and intangible, that, you know, people seek to be in. You remember the story of the Christ when he came out of the temple and the disciples said, or they were on the street rather, and they looked at the temple and they said, look at this magnificent building. And Christ had said, you see that? I'll tear it down in 3 days. He was insulted, you know, that they would have turned their attention away from the work, the ministry, to glorify what was made with man's hands. And so the temples today are not necessarily structures, you know, they are, but they're not necessarily physical structures. They can also be just the process, the man's what they call the system, and the structure itself. Sometimes, they call it, which enables them to profit and produce their wealth. And that's what they seek for people to worship. Yeah, because that gives them their power and their legitimacy.
I'm reminded again of Matthew 4. When Satan says to Jesus, if you'll worship me, you can have the world.
Yes.
And Satan only wants more power and dominion over us. No matter how much power we get, we're still beholden to worship him.
Yeah,
worldly power.
I would say that, yeah.
Because
even if the Christ gave in,
when we give that up, we're not only free of Satan, but we're free to worship God, which gives us more earthly power than we would have ever earned through Satan. Because Jesus, he was still immortal, an immortal person. He was going to die as a man. So even if he had the whole world and he was king, if he would stop worshiping God, he would die. He would eventually die. But instead, now he's the eternal king.
yes.
The same thing I think is true for trying to gain earthly dominion, like through Satan. Even by intention in the sense of by our own hands, and then, like you said, to build a tower. If instead we submit to God and follow his law out of love to the best extent we can, and try to have that humility, and instead trust God and just do the work, it's like tenfold comes back, hundredfold. What we could have ever done on our own, or even with Satan's help. It's like thinking of teenage boys are always like trying to get a girlfriend. What do I do?
Yeah.
I was like that.
How do you present yourself accordingly?
But I can't imagine anyone who doesn't want a godly husband or doesn't want a godly wife. Like, even if you're like not a Christian, or even if you're not spiritual at all, you'd probably still want that. You might not totally agree with them, you might not.
In what sense?
Want
Godly husband, godly wife,
Well, what I'm saying is they trust in God, they pray to him,
You think that everybody would prefer to have a spouse that trusts in God and prays to God?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's just that
It's just they might not know it.
They might not know it, number one, and then number two, they might not be comfortable with the language if it comes out. They're going to think, I'm not into that. But still, they'll enjoy the fruits.
Mm.
They'll always enjoy the loyalty of the person. They'll always enjoy honesty and truth and virtue. Some people are just depraved and they won't get it. But if they had a little bit more wisdom in them, they won't totally appreciate it. And if maybe it just takes a bit of error to get that. Like I know for myself at least, it took a lot of mistakes to figure out what was the right one.
I think there's a lot of relationships, especially in today's pornographic era, where the people choose to be with other people, and so you couldn't call it a marriage.
Oh.
However, this kind of thing's suitable for them, and I think that if some of those personalities get with somebody who's loyal, they may end up feeling guilt because Lord doesn't escape everyone, and therefore they may prefer to have a partner who does is not, love to give them that reason to leave.
Oh, they would want to escape the guilt.
Yeah.
But that's just hiding it deeper, making it worse. Further under the carpet.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't go away. It's not like you can try to get away from them, to be away from the influence of that feeling of guilt, but the moment you have it, it's there with you forever.
Mm-hmm.
You can try to suppress it. But
the guilt is there forever? Not necessarily.
Well, until a feeling of absolution from forgiveness, like true forgiveness. I'm reminded of the scene where Jesus forgives the prostitute who washes his feet, basically with her tears. It says,
So, we have issues today. There's more living.
oh yeah, the whole point of conversion, I was thinking of when that moment of forgiveness and all that guilt was washed away. That's a moment of conversion for sure. I mean, even if it's not in word necessarily, just the feeling of it. It's not like declaration or anything.
Yeah.
But
There's no oath.
It's not an oath or anything, but the etymology for conversion. It's economying with and verse, meaning to turn. And it's called verse because you would read it like this, like in the Greek.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they read the Greek like a snake or something.
Oh. Huh.
And it's called verse because you would turn. And the same way you would read a book is the same way you would plow a field.
Oh.
Just to turn.
Yeah.
Like you would go this way, then this way, in a field, plowing seed.
Yeah.
Or plowing the earth.
So it's a returning.
Yeah, conversion is a turning, for sure. It's a turn with what? Well, whatever you're converting to. You turn to Christ. You turn to worshiping God.
Now, what is this thing about? All those that call themselves Jews are not proselyting.
You mean like Revelation 2:9 and 3:9?
Well, no. There are certain people that will claim that the Jews, the people that call themselves Jews, are not proselyting. That they've inherited the bloodline, and that their descendants came to be what they are today, and they've passed the traditions and this kind of thing. I think they've ignored quite a bit of history, including, the books like Esther, which describes a conversion of certain people to the faith, Abrahamic faith.
Yeah.
And then you have the situation we have in a marriage, for example, pedophile's daughter, who's now somehow considered to be an Orthodox Jew.
Oh, okay.
You see. So right then and there you realize, well, that's what a proselyte is.
Conversion to Judaism has to be possible. I mean, it is since the book of Exodus.
Yeah, and then it's exactly what you just said, Judaism. Because there's no relation with that practice today with the ancient practice of old.
Right, yeah, it's very different.
Yeah.
There's some sects that sort of do it similarly, but they've added on extra text on top of it.
That's what the Talmud did.
Right, Talmud, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the books I gave you on that flash drive is several interpretations of the Talmud. Like Peter Schaeffer's Jesus in the Talmud.
Yeah.
And there's also another, the Talmud Revealing or something like that. It just goes through various parts. Um, there's also some other stuff on it. It's you might probably know it already, but the Protocols of Zion.
I've heard this and I have not studied it enough. You know,
honestly,
that's good to have.
It's a hard document to find sometimes, but like I said, it's on archive.org. You still have that.
This is something we've spoke about the banning and the censorship. This is like the first. This is the forefront of that movement to discredit any thinking of perhaps strange behavior within that history there. You know.
Right. Yeah, we're not allowed to.
Yeah, which lends me to think that maybe that should be discussed.
Yeah, I think one of the first platforms someone should run on is a lack of dual citizenship as a public office.
Lack of dual citizenship.
Like if you're a citizen of this country, you're a citizen of this country, you're loyal to this country. If you're a citizen to two countries, you're loyal to both. Yes. Maybe only to the other.
I know you seem that you've indicated you appreciate British culture and stuff. And I'm only saying that because I'm perhaps on the other end of the spectrum. And when I think about what's happened with some of this dual citizenship is, yes, you've got people that I don't think they're going to become disloyal to Great Britain, but yet they're citizens, let's say, for example, in the United States.
Yeah.
It seems strange that somebody could have dual citizen, and still be like rah, 'cause you know how they are in the USA Constitution.
Oh yeah, USA. The chants.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always good for a chant to have 3 syllables. Preferably simpler is better. The more audible it is. You don't want to have too many. You don't want to have the end of the word have the same consonant as the beginning of the next word. That's hard to chant.
Why do you mention that?
I was thinking of the aesthetics for understanding
dual citizens,
like poetic verse as for chanting. That's what chanting is. It's like comes from the word cant. Like the Song of Solomon is also called Canticles.
Oh yeah.
It's just the songs of singing. And then the canary is when he sings.
Oh.
And this goes. Chant.
All right. So
no, incantation is an incantation.
Yeah. Incantation.
Yeah, that's a cool word that combines it. It's like singing some kind of verse or doing some kind of spell. Because music is a spell in a lot of ways. Not necessarily bad. It couldn't be a holy spell in a sense.
Yeah, it has those powers.
The word spell, just like you would spell a word, spelling.
Yeah.
It's literally casting magic to speak and to say and to write.
Well, that is something that, we're seeing now.
All of the wizards of the day carried around books. They had spellings that they would cast.
That's how the language developed by the wizards.
Which is good. Certainly glad we did that.
Yeah.
Having written language, it's huge.
Well, it could be any kind of language, though. It doesn't necessarily have to be English, Roman, Latin.
No, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you can read it.
Yeah, well, and what matters is the introductory of words. Every language has to have the words, and I think some of the problem with the English is that there's certain ideas that don't exist in words for a reason. And now you're starting to see them come out. Like, for example, incentivization, which I had not heard until I started thinking and using it. And then I started
like film?
Those kind of words, huh?
Something to do with film or camera? Incentivization?
Incentivization.
Incentivism.
Incentivizing. Yeah, stuff like that. Because it's so common to practice, but it's like somebody would rather have people not think about it. Like, this is what you're doing. You're being incentivized.
Right.
Like, you're not doing what you're doing.
You wouldn't do that unless you were doing
because
something.
the Lord has guided you to that place. Instead, you've got maybe Lord's providing an incentive, but the thing is I don't think Lord quite does the incentivization. Yeah. I
Like
wouldn't
if somebody
define it
takes a
as
terrible job because it's paid a lot and they sacrifice their well-being to a great extent for it, it's like not just their physical and social and psychological well-being, but everything.
It's incentivized in so many ways.
And you pay for it with, and you exchange it for a really nice car or nice meals in restaurants. It doesn't go anywhere. It just gets consumed. And it reminds me again of somewhere in the sermons in the Gospels. What does it profit a man if he give up his soul? Yeah. I think of that often. I think of it often because it seems like the world is being controlled by evil forces. And
We're not a part of this world. Could it be a good thing?
I think, you see, that's where we have to remember
God's love the world.
Well, yeah, but we're both heavenly and earthly. We can't help but be here. And the fruits of our spirit come out, they're manifest. And you see other people and you care. And you want to give charity and or agape, right, the love. That heavenly guidance necessarily manifests itself. It's like when you speak, your heart's overfull. And like Psalm 23 fills up my cup.
Yes.
Cup runs over. That he's saying spiritual guidance, but that faith, that prayer manifests. Has to.
And the poor and humble are those that care the most. So it's
They
not
give up their last-
necessarily those that
their last
have
little
the means to provide, but yet it's like you said, it's a spiritual will that exists because one has desire to serve Lord that brings that charity.
Your heart's overfull. Like Lisa said, it's rewarding to pray. Like doing so and really speaking to God in your mind or out loud or whatever.
Yes.
It's rewarding. It really is.
Yes.
And it's rewarding in a weird, and I would say a weird way, in a strange way, but in a way that I had never been familiar with until I started. It's like nothing else. Because it's like a lot of times I tear up. Like if I'm singing gospel at church, and I really feel the words, not every song, but some songs it's like almost hard to keep singing.
Yes.
And it's not like I'm tearing up not because I'm sad.
No.
And happy's not quite the right word either.
Cleansing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wondrous joy,
Yeah.
but it's not like I'm happy I got a good paycheck or something. I'm happy I got this new thing.
Yeah. Not that kind of happy.
I'm not. It's not even happy as I'm happy I have a girlfriend. Or like I'm happy I woke up with her. You know?
Yes.
Something like that. It's about that even. And it's like you realize that all those wonderful things, as much as they are just providing your well-being, like sustenance and money, or a real physical need, or an emotional need with a woman, just having her around, like Sarah, that's my girlfriend. It's so rewarding having her around. And I think whenever I have those experiences, like praying to God or worshiping, or even sometimes just reading scripture, I think that I'm reminded of this experience with what I had with Sarah, but it's a little bit better. And it's not like, and it's such a deep emotional, like spiritual connection, and you're just so tied that you feel like you're the same. You're not necessarily the same being, but you feel it's like in Genesis again, and the references in all throughout the New Testament too, that the man and woman become one flesh.
Come together and join one.
Yeah, and that's true, and of course but independent of that, you feel much more importantly it's so close.
Yes.
And that's what's so vulgar about this pornography. And that's what's so vulgar about the society, I guess you could say,
Yes.
is that they take that beautiful connection that's natural and that is preserved by chastity and fasting and faith. And you see it, instead of seeing it as a gift, it's like something you obtain. And it's just a carnal experience that feels good. And you might as well, it's like similar to
Yes.
drinking beer or taking drugs or something.
Yes, they have attempted to corrupt that which is sacred.
Yeah, they always will. They take what's good and they present it in a caricatured way. They do that with every movie that has anything to do with Christianity. They present lots of movies about Christianity, not because the producers they like Christianity,
Yes.
not because they're even getting paid well for it, but because they want people that appreciate what it is to think of it in a certain way.
Yeah. Feeding a perception.
And then they, if you like Christianity and you don't know much about it, and maybe you don't have a good teacher, you go and watch one of these movies to learn about it,
Yes.
and then you're given this weird image.
And that's what I was speaking about when we were talking about the counter narratives, the counter story.
And if you don't like it, then maybe you'll go to the movie to mock it and ridicule it. And it'll be easy because it's set up in a certain way.
Right. Debauchery. And I was thinking about when you were speaking about the woman, you had mentioned the symbolic feature of the woman in the water.
All right.
It was very
that was very last night. Yeah.
Yeah, last night.
Yeah.
And the woman having represented as water in various accounts in the scripture, including the Adam and the Eve, and the removal of the rib,
Right. Yeah.
and the Christ being poked in
Christ
that
was stabbed in the rib, and he was
water.
walking.
Water came out.
And there's so many symbols of women near wells giving water.
Yes.
And you can't forget, I didn't mention it last night, but you can't forget the physiognomy of a woman. It's a well with water in it. And it's an ancient symbol that a spire is a masculine symbol and a well is a feminine one. A spire or a tower. Or some tall structure. That's why steeples are there. You know what I mean? That's why the mosque is just this big building. Every earthly religion,
Really.
and it's a pagan thing too.
Yeah.
But and it reminds me, we talked about Nordic mythology. Well, I talked about a little bit about Nordic mythology. I studied it for a while and I know a little bit. And it's Odin. It's very interesting, the similarities between Odin and Jesus. And I know there's huge differences too. I'm just saying, like, some of the symbolism is there. Like he hangs himself on a tree by himself to himself. And it's got this weird echo of the Trinity. God kills the Son, who is also God. The Father kills his Son, or has his Son killed.
See, the Christ was killed.
Right.
There's the difference.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a murder. I mean to say it was like the providence.
Who killed the Christ?
It was the Jews, the Romans, and the mercenaries in Calvary.
It was the people that made that decision. Yeah. It was what they called today democracy. Democracy killed the Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of Pilate, who had a conscience, it was like Barnabas did all these evils, and you're letting him free, instead of Jesus, who literally brought people back from the dead. What's wrong with you people? And then he says, "All right, I don't want to be killed. So how do you want?"
Pontius Pilate's not left off the hook either,
Yeah.
He plays the same role they play today, which
Sure.
what we were talking about, how they put themselves in a position where they say their hands are tied and they're unable to.
Right.
You hear some judges say, well, they got this mandatory sentence and we don't agree with it, but that's just the way it is. Well, if that's the case, brother, then you should step down.
Right, yeah, that's why I tell people at the store, if like they're gonna make you wear a mask, they don't have to make you wear a mask.
Yeah.
If I'm wearing a mask and the other person says nothing bad happens. If they say put on a mask and I say I really, I have a health condition, and you're not illegally allowed to ask me what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Get a HIPAA law.
Yeah.
The real thing is that. But even then, they're only enforcing the law because they've been told it's what to do, not because it's right. It makes me think of the Nuremberg defense, like the Nazis who killed 6 million.
Actually, it's 15. I've got the almanac, and that's what it reports as 6
15.
plus
the number changes a lot.
6. Yeah, 6 plus 9. I think if you go on perhaps Wikipedia and look it up today, it might only be 9 now. But that 2005 almanac, I can show you. It says 6 million, what they call Jews, and then it says 9 million others. So I have to wonder why we discuss one group over all the others for the rest of the term.
Just consider all of World War II, hundreds of million, over 100 million people, 120 million people, something like that died.
Yeah.
Like if you consider
Well, then that would be
communist Russia
yeah.
and warfare.
That would deserve our attention, but no, I guess
Instead, we focus on this tiny group.
there's something wrong with that. I have to doubt the story.
Even if you do that, even if there's no doubt about the story whatsoever, it still shouldn't be treated like that.
That's true.
I think there's a lot of doubtful things about the story, but it kind of, at the end of the day, what can you do?
Talk about the masks.
Anyway.
Symbolism.
Yeah, the mask, they don't... Well, the thing about the Nuremberg trials was that their defense was, I was just following orders. I shouldn't be culpable because I was just following orders.
That's a valid point.
But,
and that's how people are today. I mean, they would say, well, if there's a law that says that this pen is red and you can't use this pen here, does anybody disagree with that? And people say, no, I don't because it's the law. Perhaps. I'm giving an actual real example from the prosecutor during the jury for the selection hearing.
right.
So they want to try to say, well, this person doesn't, believe in our system of law, so they think that they shouldn't be allowed or shouldn't be forced to follow. That's not right. Blah blah blah. But then they want to turn around and say, well, these people were working with the Nazis, so therefore they're accountable.
Right.
And I'm not saying which one's right, which one's wrong, I mean, because you need a law. But what I see is that that's not a real law they have because nobody on the planet knows what it is. That's why they always have to get together and decide how to interpret this, how to interpret that, what to make something new. We have a system right here which provides us with the law. It's only this big. Half the story's never been told, so we only have to examine this amount of it, this portion, to determine what it is appropriate for us to do.
And if any man shall take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part out of the book of life, not from the holy city and from the things which are written in this book. So if you...
But see, what's happening today is that they're imposing laws that don't exist. That's what this mask so-called mandate's about.
And it's just a step.
They got the ball rolling. They required people to do it. They lifted the requirements to say, oh, we're not too bad. We had someone coming down on us from the top telling us that we had to make these impositions. Now we're lifting the requirements, but people are still wearing them because it's become a cultural phenomenon, and people are starting to enforce this upon each other.
Right, yeah. And they think it's an ethical thing. They think the viruses are actually dangerous, and they think that they're helping people. They're convinced that the masks not only work, but are a source of good.
If you don't wear one, you're putting all these people in danger.
Right. Which implies that the person is toxic. That the human being is a dangerous thing. I read a story about a young girl who was afraid to leave the house because of all year long, and she started crying. Like, I don't want to leave the house, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And the mother was like, it's okay, we're going out to the park.
Yeah, yeah.
And she was terrified.
That's conditioning. If you bring up a child into this world and tell them that every single person could potentially kill you if you get within a certain distance from them, you know, because to me the mask is not effective. We've realized that. We don't need scientists to tell us, you know, this and that. But by the way, they haven't. Nobody's actually sat down and did a thorough, you know, research into how the masks actually prevent us, and why is it that we're not required to wear certain. We can wear it. I can put a bandana or whatever, you know, if I have to. It's not going to stop if I sneeze, you know what I mean?
You take them off to sneeze.
So it's symbolic. You realize
Who wants
it's
to sneeze on
symbolic.
the inside of their...
Yeah, who's going to sneeze in
So
their
you
mask?
sneeze outside of it, somewhere, not in your shirt, but...
and they haven't, I mean, most of the germs we probably get are from their hands, which they say, wash your hands, but there's no, you know what I mean? You can't really
wash your
impose
hands
that.
24/7.
You can't make people wash their hands every
Even if you did it, Lisa said yesterday, you have to practice your immune system. It's not like, jump in a pile of manure or anything and like improve your immune system.
Yeah.
I mean, it might work, but it's not going to be pleasant. But yeah, if you don't work out your immune system doesn't get regular practice, it'll just get weaker and weaker.
Yeah. So the masks.
And that's what's happening, even if we wanted to or not.
If the masks were effective, then the problem would continue to get worse, which would mean we're reaching new records, you know, grim milestones here. So it's kind of like the ISIS or the Al Qaeda phenomenon, where you're like, oh, this is the bad group, we're going after them, but then they keep saying, oh, it's getting worse. Wait a minute, you devoted all this energy into eradicating this group, but it keeps getting worse, and now all of a sudden kind of disappeared, they hustled up under. But this corona's kind of taking the same thing, where it's like it keeps digress what they say, but it keeps progressively getting worse, although the restrictions have been imposed. So you see it as a kind of symbolism, and it's training the young generations to say, hey, be afraid. You know, make sure you pay attention to those that are around you. You see, kind of raising up in this world of paranoia so that those people begin to enforce those rules upon each other. Because those at the top don't want a world where they're always, do this, you got to do this, because eventually people getting like, you know, wait a minute, my life ain't so good. I'm working longer and harder for less and less to provide, and yet, you know, I'm being, you know, more and more restricted. What happened to the idea of freedom?
That's why I love this yard so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's such like I guess you can call it homestead. It's independence. Because if you have a source of food, you don't have to you don't have to worry about groceries.
Yeah, it's called homesteading, right? Yeah.
You know, if you can manage all the products you need on a certain property, you don't even have to leave home. I mean, you obviously would like to travel, maybe a little bit here and there, different parts of town. But,
Yeah.
you don't need to go far.
No, the idea is self-sufficiency.
Simpler
and
life is a
somebody
better life.
trying to get us to not get that.
Yeah, it's very hard to get started, and a lot of people are discouraged even from thinking about it. Like a house is more and more expensive depending on certain luxuries that people are going to want. So then instead of going out into the countryside and finding a cheap home and figuring out how to be independent like that, or maybe just having a family already that knows how to do that, can give forth knowledge, like wisdom of experience through the generations, instead of having a family that knows that and has traditions in that. Instead, people are in the cities and they're unable to go live on their own because they wouldn't make it. They don't have the tradition, they don't have the family support, and they don't have the wherewithal to produce what they need. And so they're prevented from doing so. Some people have tried to learn that stuff, but it always feels incomplete. There's no way I still can do that because I need to save up money so I can actually get out there and like purchase a piece of land or something. And that's just another thing. Even if which makes it impossible to do so. So another thing is, even if you have your own house and you can pay for you don't need to pay for very much. You still have to pay for property tax. You still have to pay for land. that attacks.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like any king will
Sorry
ask
to
you
be
to
totally
search,
off, the string.
you're never quite out. As long as you're on that land, you're beholden to the king of the land, or the sovereign.
Yeah, well, even when the Pilgrims had landed, they were, I would say, forced to sign the Mayflower Compact, giving allegiance to the gay king James, and that was something that I really think that was not desirable for some of those individuals. But they were almost, it was like, do this or else.
Yeah, it was under the authority of power.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe it's not true. Maybe their signatures got forged. You know.
Just surprised.
But yeah, the mask is symbol. You know, it's bringing us somewhere. We're going in a direction. We've already discussed it. The beast mark.
Right.
You know, if you go into a place and you want to travel, for example, and now you've got to get your forehead scanned, something ain't going the way towards freedom.
You know, they're catching temperatures of people. If somebody seems ill, they'll deny them from the country. And you know, I'm not saying we should. It's not good for people to be ill on airplanes or anything. Most of the time, like my girlfriend Sarah, she's went on an airplane once and got sick.
Yeah.
It was 2 trips, but one whole overall trip, but 2 airplane rides.
Yeah.
She got sick.
Yeah.
And that was her only time ever on the airplane. We went to Illinois.
Oh, not a good experience.
It was for Christmas one year.
Yeah.
And she became ill for a couple weeks after that. And the only reason she went home was because she had to work.
Yeah.
Some gift shop wanted her working on the 26th. There's no.
So yeah, you know, there's some kind of balance, but that's not the thing. The thing is that the people are being tracked.
Yeah. So taking temperatures is only one thing. It's never simple.
I've got the state that sends me a letter now saying, hey, you need to bring your car in so that we can fix your airbag. This is the state. First it was from the Department of Motor Vehicles, now it's from the actual state of Florida. Yeah, I've had somebody come to the door. I've documented it with a Honda shirt. You saw that Accord. It's a 2001.
Yeah.
It's 20 years old, and they're begging me to go get it fixed for my safety. And they send month after month. I've been getting, the thing in the mail. Now it's coming from the state itself. It's like, do this or what?
I've had
You're gonna put me in jail?
I've had recall orders, like I'm bringing your car for a warranty update or something, or they want to make sure that.
I gotta say, they're looking to put something in that car other than to fix the airbag. They're looking to put a tracking device in that car. It doesn't just happen with that car, it happened with the other car that we had. Now, of course, the new cars, and the one before that, that's it. So the new cars now have those devices built in.
I wouldn't be too surprised. Every car has a PIN number, and it's unique to the vehicle itself, even to the license plate. And all they have to know is take that number and attach it to certain names.
Yeah, it's easy to track. Now, the thing is that if you're opposed to this, if somehow you got a problem with it, somehow now all of a sudden you should be the one on the radar because you must be hiding something. If you desire to not be tracked or not be listened to when you're having a conversation with your wife in private or whatever like that, now all of a sudden you must be hiding something. We gotta watch this person extra. And that's kind of the way the world's moving with the whole mask thing and everything.
Exactly.
You ain't wearing a mask? Something must be wrong with you.
You don't want your phone calls tracked. You don't want your internet search history looked at. What are you hiding?
Yeah.
And I think
and they haven't even told us what they do with this stuff, as far as building their gigantic profiles.
They were talking about red flag laws for gun ownership.
Yeah.
Even Trump was passing that, despite the platform on which he was elected.
Yeah.
Bunch of lies. I appreciate the rhetoric and I appreciate it more than the opposing side, you know. But it's just like we were saying earlier. It's the binary thinking. It's called. There's a group of people I follow. They call it Finkelthink.
Yeah.
After somebody named Finkelstein, who developed this idea of thinking, this way of governance, back in like the 40s or something.
Yeah.
I forget his name. But yeah, Finkelthink.
Finkelthink.
Yeah, it's this idea where. I don't totally agree with the Republican platform, but I like when he talks, and he says good stuff. And it's either that or the other choice, which is those weird people who seem to hate everyone and want to go after some weird kind of justice all the time, and they're always worried about a million things. They want to kill babies. No way with that one. And
yeah, they get you on that, don't they? Now, don't you think if those guys that are so pro-life are in power, don't you think that the rules should have changed by now?
You think?
But it's all the same.
It's
and
all
they
the
keep
same.
one rinky-dinky town in Texas,
Right.
Restricting abortions, and therefore somehow it's still an issue. No, that's just a way to keep people in, keep them. It's all about participation with them. They don't care whether you vote for this group or that group. Just go and vote because that gives them legitimacy.
Yeah.
It says, hey, there's a demand for this.
You're not even in a lot of states. You're not even allowed to vote in the primaries unless you have a party.
Yeah, that's here, I think.
I think that's true in Florida.
That's here, yeah. But we stopped voting.
I voted in this last election. Even if the one for president is useless, I kind of feel like the local votings matter, like the local
maybe
jurisdictions, like the school board.
Depends where you are, Yeah.
And they give us some kind of statement. Again, it's just a statement, and again, it's usually a binary one, decided. But generally, it's a good idea to research each candidate. It takes a little bit while you're filling it out, and see what their statements at least they agree with. At least then they'll be beholden to their statement.
But how will they be beholden?
By
they
the
don't
dissent
follow
of the
through.
governed.
What are you gonna do about it?
Only by the dissent of the governed. I mean, that's what the march on January 6th was the dissent of the governed, because they voted for, the numbers didn't make sense for Biden, and in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of evidence that stacked up against. And even if it's fake evidence, 39% of people in the United States think that the election was stolen. That's a huge number. Because a lot of people
I would
don't
have
know.
to dispute that and say that those numbers are phony. Those polls are just phony. How can you tell me 39% of people that you'd have to survey everybody? Don't tell me, we did a random sample and somehow that equates to the whole. It's not by the whole polling thing is just another way of catching people's attention. And look at when they told people, because this is what I heard, that the pedophile was going to get blown out. That to me would be an incentive for people to go if they were in favor of the pedophile, for more people to go. Because it's like this. If I tell you, let's say, you want somebody to succeed. They're doing a high school thing. They're trying to sell some cookies or something like that. But you don't have that much money. You kind of don't really want. And you find out this person been getting money from all the neighbors, and they're stacked up in money. You really want this person to succeed, but you're poor. Let's say, for example. When you find out that that person has achieved their goals, you're satisfied. You don't feel like you got to give them any more.
Right, yeah.
So it's like when people thought that, this is going to be a blowout, I think it would have drove people, but that's all speculation. The whole point is that people are being convinced to participate in something because they're being told they have a stake in it. And once these so-called leaders get in position, what kind of power do you really have? You really don't. You know, you can write a letter or whatever, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, like anything you try to do, if you want like to petition for something, for example, you got to meet all the specific criteria.
Yeah.
That they
certified.
keep you out.
Yeah.
You know, so the people don't have power. This thing they call democracy, it's not for real.
No. Not even close, yeah. It's an oligarchy for sure. And like you said, the people who are identified with the party who won are basically pacified for the next 4 years or whatever it is. 4 to 8. And so it's like ironic a little bit, because Republicans had all three.
As we
All
discussed,
three.
they were
branches.
so pro-life.
Branches.
Yeah, they had all three of the seats or whatever.
Yeah, they had the Senate, the House, and the presidency.
The entire package, and the Democrats before them had the same kind of deal going on. But these agendas they got all of a sudden don't get pushed. That's what I mean. You can put either piece in the position and you still get the same result.
Yeah, because if the people want them to pass something and it's good for the people, because basic common sense stuff that would be good, you know. But it's not good for the elite powers that are and for their interests. Then they'll garner up 49 to 51% favorability or
That's what I was saying.
disagreeability.
That's what I was saying.
And they'll just make it so that every time they're about
49 to 51.
about to get it, it's just the other side is just a little bit too much.
Just holding us back.
Nothing happens. No matter who has power, nothing happens. Unless it's good for the powers.
It's like tug of war, but nobody wins. You know. They just keep pulling one side and the other side. And as soon as you get over here, you let up a little bit. The other side goes strong. It's pretty easy to do, don't you think? If you both know what's going on.
Yeah, and you just have actors on either side, and you got a TV, all televised.
Yeah. Make it important.
That's why simple life is better.
Quality of life, you know, simplicity.
I saw, on the way here,
What's that?
I saw several churches, and they all had like some kind of sign outside of it,
Yeah.
and it was so much different than in the city.
Oh, yeah.
Like the phrases were meaningful.
Uh-huh.
I really was like struck by a couple of them.
Yeah.
I thought about
Yeah.
it, as opposed to being in the city where it's some sloppy.
City is a corrupting force. You know, the highest god of the Babylonians was the highest god.
To Babylon.
Babylon, the city itself. Some I think say it's Marduk in another writing, but
Marduk is I think it's Sumerian, that region.
Mhm.
Assyrian perhaps. It's that region's
Yeah, you said it right. The Sumerians.
Sumerian equivalent of Thor and Jupiter and Zeus is Marduk. He's the one holding lightning bolts. His day is Thursday.
Well, the scripture actually forbids us to make mention of these gods. It's just that for educational purposes, sometimes they have to be introduced.
Yeah. Well, the Bible references that as frequently too. Like Brenfan, the star of Brenfan,
Yeah.
or Baal.
Yeah.
You know the name Beelzebub is Lord of the Flies.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Baal meaning Lord.
Yes. The accusation that the Christ that casts out devils through the Lord of the Flies, Beelzebub.
Right.
And the Christ, of course, replied, "The house divided itself shall not stand. How could I do this thing?"
If it's true what you're saying, then you shouldn't worry. It'll fall.
And speaking of that, this event that we had just discussed, and you know, that you seem to think was more of a provocateur stage
Who is that?
over there at the Washington D.C.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The main dude with the dude with the pelt and the horns and the face paint and the tattoos, all like very Nordic tattoos. You know?
But see, that's what they chose to pay attention to, and that's all you see. And it's I don't disagree by the sound of it. That sounds like a fake. But then again, now he's supposed to be the representative of the people that really did ransack the place.
Exactly.
And that's where I say no.
He's dressed up, but he acted as a representative. Like he went on the bullhorn and got people riled up and said, "Let's storm the building."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And he was the leader of it all. And he was in the chamber where the Senate sits and makes decisions and stuff. That big courtroom.
Yeah.
There's a picture of him just like holding something.
I mean, that sounds like a stage.
It's definitely staged, and
I haven't seen it yet. All I know is I hear it seems kind of
but
embarrassing.
that dude is a provocateur. Like he's an agent of this power structure.
Seems embarrassing. I'm not sure what the purpose would be. But then again, you seem to think that it was. You seem to think the election was rigged.
Oh yeah, 100% it was.
I say the election was not. I think the last one was, and what I say is that they're using this as an exercise. They realize they've got enough participation. Their numbers were higher than ever. They reported historical numbers, which population
over 100%
grows. So,
voter turnout in some states. Watch out.
Population grows, so that's inevitable. But anyway, and plus they did the voting, the mail-ins, and all that. I think that this was an exercise to show that the election process is structurally sound and it can't be tampered. But I think that those machines are not are vulnerable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's almost like
what they're doing is they're doing hand counting this time to kind of prove to the world that hey, this will work.
That's the thing. If you're going to count invalid votes by hand or by machine, what's the difference? It's the subject that they're counting that's the problem. You know, there's fake signatures. There's a million ballots that are.
Well, you can't really think
only
that a pedophile had that many supporters.
No way. He had such little turnout at his rallies. He had such a little in-party support. I hated him.
He would have, won the election.
Well, I don't think he won the election.
Oh, I thought you said it was rigged.
Wait. We're talking about 2020 or
We're talking about
2016?
2021.
21.
Right now.
Okay. Yeah, I think Trump won,
You think he had that kind of support?
but only with a legal count.
Well, anyway.
If you see these crowds,
You know how the Electoral College works, do you?
yeah, the electoral college works.
Yeah, so it's not even a majority count anyway, which is the most simple thing to do. You want the accurate record, you're going to do a majority count. You can't, every vote counts, right? But no, they don't play that.
The reason is that you have multiple parts of power. You have the Senate and the House.
Yeah,
And the Senate, every state gets 2 Senate members,
yeah.
and every state also gets every state gets
Proportion of population.
different number of representatives for
Right.
the House depending on the population.
Yes, it's the legislative branch that we're speaking of.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're called the United States. When we were a union, that snake that said join or die or live free or die or whatever it was, the snake. Gadsden, I think. That initial flag was representing all different colonies, and if we don't stand together, we'll fall.
Mm-hmm.
House divided will fall.
Yeah,
That was the principle there.
yeah.
And so they were in a revolutionary war against Britain.
Supposedly.
All right.
Somebody fought.
Yeah, somebody fought somebody.
I think the outcome tended into Britain's favor, ultimately, of course. And you can't say that Britain doesn't have control of all these colonies all over the planet, and somehow they were going to let the separatists come here and set up their religious rule. No. The system of rule is adopted directly from the English. It's called a common law system. We don't live under religious law. That's exactly how the British got their way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would say that we are being controlled, governed through nation states Florida exists as its own nation.
Right. Yeah, that's
it
what
has
the states
a flag, they have their own system, and they lock the most people up. All the states. The federal government doesn't do that. So-called federal government. So the federal government has its kind of purpose, but it ain't enough. It's not for protection. They make pretend that the Constitution is for protection. I say it's perpetration. And the states are those that are actually governing, even through their county agencies. They're the ones that are making the rules, putting us in jail, putting us in front of the judge and examiner. So you can't fool me to thinking that we live in the United States. No, we live in each state has its own government, and really, as far as I can tell, the U.S. say it doesn't even exist.
Well, it certainly exists in the minds of people.
Yeah, and that's where it needs to exist for it to exist, and that's the only place it needs to exist. Just like money. As long as people think that it's worth something, they're going to use it. As soon as people think it's not worth anything, then what value does it have?
Well, I'll tell you what, the result of this January 6th is that half the population, at least, doesn't think the system is valid.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I think
huge.
they've already noticed. I think they've already gotten to that.
Compare that to 2020, before November 3rd.
Yeah.
Compare that to last year.
Who are they looking at? Who is their leader? It's the guy that has sworn by the system his whole, even before he was born. You know. I mean, this is the face of capitalism. Capitalism is what runs the government.
It's not capitalism, though. It's, at least not in the free sense. It's not like, hey, I want your thing and you want my thing, but our things are worth different values. What if I give you this currency with it and we can trade?
That's what it is. It's a medium of exchange called capital.
Right.
If you eliminate that, you would have a more sensible world. People would be getting more of a fair deal if you eliminate that currency, because the currency is being controlled. Now we've gone into a digital era, which is even worse. You're going to tell me that I could have bought a Bitcoin for $40 a few years ago, and now I think they were saying something like,
Yeah, it's growing up.
whatever it is now.
Yeah,
It's
but
thousands
they
of
want to
dollars.
centralize it just like they did with the Federal Reserve. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, meaning it's independent of that, but it won't be that way for long. The most powerful one will be instantly bought up.
I don't think anything of that nature is independent of Caesar. Yeah. And there's more. Yeah, I mean, the whole digital thing is the beast mark. When you are required to have that name, number, or mark to buy or sell, that's where the digital currency goes. You have to have the device, whatever the device they give you.
Yeah. Next, like I said, I might soon move to a phone, just a really basic common phone,
Yeah.
and try to remove any tracking information or whatever.
When you sign up this phone, and I've got one right here, a flip phone.
Yeah.
This is a flip phone with the AT&T plan. When you sign this phone up, it tells you agree for everything you say on here to be recorded.
Really?
And you agree for everything that's said about you by anybody else to be recorded. I kid you not. And I videoed it, so I have that.
Okay.
And if you don't agree, you don't get to use the phone.
That's how it works.
And there's only a few companies.
You can disagree with the terms of service, but you can't use the product.
Yeah, and that's what they tell you. Oh,
Okay.
sir, you have the freedom to not agree, but you can't come into our store.
Yeah, go create your own.
Yeah.
My own multinational banking system.
Yeah.
Go create your own
Right.
internet platform with video hosting. It's like,
Right.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. And that's
Go create your own nation with its own laws, and then all of a sudden, when people think about doing that,
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh wait, no, don't do that." Yeah, dude.
It's happening.
I'm telling you, man, it's really heating up. This truly is the best of all timelines.
The best of all times?
Yeah, not the best of all times, but the best of all possible timelines.
Timelines.
Which is to say, the best of all possible worlds. Which is to say, I'm arguing a theodicy. Speaking for God, it's the events that happen line up, and it's the best possible way.
Well, Lord certainly intended it, because Lord is in control.
It's a counter-argument against the problem of evil. When somebody says, how can a good God allow all this evil to happen?
Oh, yeah.
How can an all-powerful God, and that is good, not prevent it?
Mm-hmm.
And how can a good God that's all-powerful, but also omniscient, not know about it? So, he knows about it, doesn't want it to be evil, and can stop it. If it doesn't, evil God. That's the problem of evil. And the counter-argument is theodicy. This also is, which is to say, you have the best. This is the best of all possible worlds. Meaning, any evil that does exist is because its counterpart is good, and the good couldn't be without evil. But I think that's relatively
Any evil
weak.
that does exist means because the counterpart is good, and the good couldn't be without the evil.
I think that's part of the argument, but it's weak. I think it's
What?
That's the weaker of the two arguments.
Weaker?
Yeah. And I was disappointed because I taught my students once the two arguments.
By your students?
Yeah, when I was teaching.
Yeah.
And I taught the problem of evil.
Yeah.
And the counter argument is of twofold. It's one to say good can only exist with evil.
Yeah.
Like the binary, like yin yang kind of thing.
Good can only exist with evil. Yeah. The yin and yang thing.
I mean, in certain senses, it does have merit. Like, you can only be free if you have the freedom to choose to do it or not to do it. You can only give love if it's free. It's not love if it's forced.
Yeah.
So,
It's not love if it's forced.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it is good. And it's good that there is such a thing as choice.
Yeah.
And because there's such a thing as choice, people are going to do bad things.
Yeah. So there's the answer, because Lord gave us free will.
But even that
So
is,
would they prefer for Lord or not to give us free will? You know, you can ask them.
but even then, that's still a weaker of the argument.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The stronger argument that's a theodicy goes, even when things appear bad, I know that they're good because my God made it happen.
Even when things appear bad, I know they're good because my God made it happen.
Which is, I think, more faithful.
They can be also kind of...
It's not that it isn't a struggle. It's
Yeah.
not like, oh, I love being poked in the side. Or I love something worse, like losing all sorts of money or being in prison or something.
Yeah.
Or being tortured.
Yeah.
You know, there are way worse things. But even when that happens, it's not that it shouldn't hurt. It's that it's happening for a reason. That reason might be for you to grow courage
That's
to
right.
stand up.
Yeah.
That purpose might be for you to get angry
Yeah.
and to do something.
And that's the distinction between our faith and the other worldly faiths. Whereas the worldly faiths teach that those that have blessings today are truly God's people. That those that, you know, are living in comfort, have
Yeah, they have all the money.
everything they desire, for example, must be blessed by God. That's what the worldly religions teach, or gods, for example. Whereas our faith teaches that it is the struggle, and it takes persecution to find the humility